Welcome to the Mega Blast Podcast. I'm your host, Jason McDonald. My goal is to get to the truth through conversation. The Mega Blast Podcast is produced by Arts and Opinion, an online journal housed at the Archives of Canada. Visit us at artsandopinion.com. I hope you enjoy today's guest. So welcome, Milton Fernandez. Thanks for coming on my podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Good. The objective of this podcast is to talk about your country, the Dominican Republic. The Mega Blast podcast is going international today. We've got a Canadian-Dominican discussion going on here. So before we get to your country and its relationship with its neighbor, Haiti, and the minority there, that's the objective. Why don't you tell listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do and some of your background?
Sure, love to. So as Jason introduced, my name is Milton Fernandez. I live in the Dominican Republic, born and raised. I'm sort of 53 years old. I have father of many children. And my what I do is I'm a system engineer. I'm specializing in project management at this time. That's what I do now.
Okay.
And I have been always, an observer of current events, studying some history. Mm-hmm. And I think I have some perspective, okay, on.
I can affirm that. I can affirm from my many conversations with Milton that you have a very interesting perspective. That's why I invited you on. Do you, your formal education, is it in computer systems management, stuff like that? Is that
is correct? Okay, that is correct.
Right.
Computer sciences, yes.
So you're a bit like me with economics. I'm sort of an economic amateur. I've sort of studied economics myself, but I don't have any formal training. And I even teach some business English classes where I work. I don't know. Sounds like you're sort of an amateur in sociology and things like history and things like that, right?
I can say that some type of history buff or history buff wannabe.
Okay. So I'm going to assume that people know a little bit about the geography. I mean, just to, but we can outline, Hispaniola is an island and it contains these two countries. I believe Haiti is on the eastern side. I'm just trying to orient my brain. The other western side. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's about the Dominican Republic is about 2/3 and Haiti's about 1/3 geographically. Is that about correct?
That is about correct.
More or less. And what about the populations? My understanding is there's about 10 million people in either country. Is that about right? Or is that, I don't know.
Well, in the last census, yes. It's about the same population. We have a little bit more, but we have more terrain, more land, if you want. And in our neighbor country it's about 10 million in much less terrain. Sure. Yes.
Okay, so this gets into there's a few things we're going to get into. The that I wanted to ask you is so the populations are about the same. Maybe the Dominican Republic's maybe 10% larger now. It's also now the Dominican Republic is many magnitudes less poor or richer, depending how you're going to calculate that, right? I believe I've heard it's like 10 times richer. Is that more or less true? Just on the GDP and all that stuff, is that correct? I don't know.
That is about correct. Okay. I mean, I just want to say that more or less.
Right. It's not precise.
That doesn't mean that wealth, that excess in wealth from our neighbors translates in prosperity for the common citizen. But yes, we are.
You mean, sorry to interrupt, but just I want to make clear what you mean. So you mean that the Dominican Republic being 10 times richer does not necessarily mean that many of its citizens are that much richer. Is that
yes, that is correct. I mean in that there's not the same, but there's economic inequality here. Yeah, that's
Right.
not a secret. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that both countries have very high inequality. It's the poorer the country, the higher the inequality in some senses, because every country has some rich people, right? So
Sure.
there must be people in Haiti who are extremely rich,
Indeed, they
right?
are.
So
Yeah.
and yet the vast majority of the population is living extremely close to the bone, right? So
Yeah. That is correct.
okay. So that outlines what the two places are like. But both countries are, middle or low income, but the Dominican Republic is less poor than Haiti. That's sort of obvious. Most people would know this. Just one thing I wanted to ask you about the history was, my understanding is at the time of the Haitian Revolution, which is around the early part of the 19th century, sort of late 18th, early 19th century. It's concurrent with the French Revolution. The
Yes.
population of Haiti was much greater and it was much richer than Santo Domingo, which was the Spanish colony. Is that true? Do you know anything about that?
I think it was one of the richest colonies of France at that time, which translate in bigger population. And
Right.
if you want a better economy at that time.
Yeah, so it was from what I read that the Spanish had kind of neglected the colony in what's now the Dominican Republic was called Santo Domingo, and so it was supposed to be a ranching colony to supply food for Mexico. But the French had invested in like sugarcane plantations more on the Haitian
Correct.
side, right? And so the economy was more modernized in Haiti. And this is modernized at the standards of 1800, just to be clear. It's not modern by what anybody now would imagine, but it was more developed. There was more capital investment and more plantations and more trade and investment coming and going than there was. So that's an interesting fact, I think, for modern listeners, because if you look at it today, it's basically reversed, more or less, right?
Yes, and I think it's in the fact in the way of the two imperial, if you want to say that,
the empires.
countries,
So the Spanish Empire versus the French Empire
made their colonizations or treated their colonies. I think that the French were more focused on extraction, exploitation of sugarcane and whatever riches were in Haiti. And I don't know if they treated to replicate their government administration in their colonies. For example, in the Spanish side, we still have traces or many Spanish institutions. I mean, the city hall or ayuntamiento, that it was in Spanish. You see the in the buildings. You've been here. You have gone to the colonial zone. You see there are traces that there was an organization here. There was a government, Spanish, European model. I don't know if that is like that.
Evident, that's interesting.
In Haiti. I mean,
that's very interesting.
Should have.
That's a good question. I mean, what are the traces of the French colonial regime in Haiti today? I've never been there. I'd be curious to see it. I don't know. They certainly threw the French out very definitively in the revolution.
Oh yes.
Right?
Yes.
They ethnically cleansed the country. That's again a matter of record. Of the non-slave or non-African people. From what I've studied the Haitian Revolution a little bit because it's sort of fascinating to me as a historical event, and I believe it was Dessalines who, the earlier Ouverture was more, conciliatory. He was actually in the French army, in fact, he was an officer, and he was very sort of like he was more conciliatory. And then they captured him and they took him. He died in France. And then Dessalines came in later, and he was a black supremacist. I mean, he was like really, and so they basically, that's a real difference between the two countries, is the views on race. This brings us almost to the modern, brings us almost, we're going to toggle back and forth between the modern incarnations and what happened historically. But as I understand it, Haitian people have a much more sort of a Black pride mindset in that regard, right? Because they see themselves as creating their nation and forcing out this colonial empire, whereas your country, many people probably won't know, actually forced the Haitians out of you, right, in order to become independent, right? So it was almost in opposition to that Black pride in some senses, right? Is that a reasonable way to think about it, or I don't know?
Well, I think it was a matter more than racial supremacy. I mean, Black or whites, or who's more Spanish and who's more French or Black. It was a question of independence, because we have many Negro here in this side, and it was not a matter of race, but sort of independence. And yes, you're right. Our independence in 1844 was from Haiti, not from Spain. Spain has sort of ceded this side of the island to the French in the Basilia Treaties. Okay, so Haitians sort of, this
took over.
Yes, this was French. I kick out the French, so this side is mine too.
Right. Okay, so that's how it went. So Santo Domingo had already been ceded to France, the entire island, and then the Haitians did the revolution, so they just kind of owned everything. I thought that they invaded. I thought the Haitians sort of mounted an invasion and came in and kicked the Spanish out. Is that not how it went? No, maybe I have it wrong.
But the Spanish had at that time, we can fact check, but the Spanish had at that time ceded this side.
Interesting. Okay.
1795.
Yeah, because I think that I guess it's just my mind. I just figured that the Spanish were still there, but that makes more sense in some senses why the Haitians would have been in control more easily. They didn't have to fight the Spanish, right? They just all of a sudden the whole island belonged to this new country of Haiti, right? This new, right? Something like
correct.
That. Is that?
It's correct.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, the racial. I have to admit that the whole Black-white thing is really not important to most modern Dominicans, as I understand. I'm really impressed personally with your country's lack of interest. Actually, I should phrase it differently. Your country seems to have a real pride in being mixed African and European in origin, and I suppose Indian, right? That seems to be a point. Like it's almost like this pride in being a mixed group of people. And if they're, and this is something I think is so cool. Fanny's always bragging about, my wife is from your country, that she calls it like our family's like the Benetton family. There are Blacks, there are whites. Like, and she's when she tells people this, people's eyes here sort of go wide. Like, really, there are white people in your family? Like when they see her, she's Black, they assume everyone in her family is Black, right? Yes. And she's like, no, my uncle this and that and the other, and Jason tell you and everything. And I think that I like to think that maybe one day the United States will have the view your country has. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe one day they'll get past this whole sort of hyper focus on the descendants of the slaves being this, if that makes sense. That's a bit of a sidebar, but okay. But that particular racial phenomenon is very interesting to me. But as we get into the more modern era, there are, just to outline what it's like today in the Dominican Republic, right? There are it's hard for me to get my mind around this. Maybe you can confirm some of this, but there are somewhere in the hundreds of thousands of people who are Haitian-born people who have immigrated, right? Then there are perhaps some millions who are Dominicans, but of Haitian origin, right? And then that gets a bit difficult to nail down because there's a lot of mixing, right? Many,
yes.
Right. So that's hard to nail down. What is a a Haitian, like Fanny's part Haitian, for example, like millions of other Dominicans, right? So is she a Haitian Dominican, or is she just a Dominican, right? Do you know any of those numbers there? I don't know, it's a bit geeky, but maybe you could clarify them for me. Maybe you know more.
Well, the last numbers that we have, and I want to check this if you don't mind, from the census.
Yeah, my understanding is it's in the hundreds of thousands. Also, many of the migrants are not documented, right? That's the other thing, right?
So that's the other thing.
So how do we know if we say it's 800,000 Haitian-born people living in the Dominican Republic? Is that an estimate? I don't know,
almost exact. It's in the 2017 census. There was 751,080 people of
Haitian national
origins.
Well, origins, or does that mean like someone who's born in the Dominican Republic, both of whose parents came from Haiti, would be counted there, or must that person have been born in Haiti?
No details, just Haitian origin.
Yeah, okay.
And that accounted for the 7.4% of the population, the total population. Okay. So not too shabby.
Yeah, that's a lot of. I mean, that's That's a fairly high. My guess is it's higher too. Honestly,
I guess so.
That's just my sort of anecdotal thing from having gone around in the streets there. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that seem correct to you, that it's actually higher, that the number of undocumented people is so high that it's just hard to know, right?
Yes, it's hard to know. We don't have an exact number, because it's a board. I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble, but no. It's almost non-existent control at the border. I mean, there are too much illegal passes. I think the army, which is the institution that protects or tries to protect the border, cannot control them.
Yeah.
Or will not.
Yeah. Well, will not. Yeah. That's a sort of a political question you're posing. Is, because in theory, I mean, the border could be more controlled. I mean, a fence could be built. I've heard that some politicians in Dominican Republic have proposed building a fence, right?
It's in the works.
Is it really? Okay, interesting. Yeah, okay, I didn't know that. That's a development that's more recent. I mean, there's this idea in the debate about in the United States, because I want to say that it's very similar, that your country's relationship with Haiti, I think, is very similar to the United States and its relationship with the southern border with Mexico in some respects, because you've got one country that's richer than the other one. And then you've got a border so people are naturally migrating into the richer country for looking for better opportunities and work and all that, which is perfectly normal for the Central Americans and Mexicans going to the United States. Who would blame them to want to do that? And who would blame the Haitians to want to go to find a better life or send money home, whatever they want to do? No,
there's no blame here, because as you see, the richer country is a magnet for the not so fortunate country, and if they have a common border, migration will happen.
Right, it will.
It happens in the United States, and Mexico is not a little country. Mexico is a big country and very rich, but you have the same in Europe.
Oh, sure.
People from Eastern Europe are migrating to I don't know, more prosperous countries
in Western Europe. Yeah.
So it happens, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with I don't know, with race, or it's just a magnet. If you're going to be better, have more opportunities and health and whatnot, it will happen, and there's no blame, absolute.
That's right.
To blame. The Dominicans are everywhere.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's important to put that we're sort of putting it into a world context, that your country is, it's different from other Caribbean countries in that it has a border, right? Most Caribbean islands don't have borders.
Correct.
There's one island, I think it's Saint Martin, is like half Dutch and half French, but both sides are relatively prosperous because they're European colonies, right? So, but Cuba and Jamaica and Puerto Rico, the larger islands, don't have any borders.
One island, one country.
Right, one island, one country, whereas your country has a border, and you've got this difference between the two. It's not like they're two poor countries beside each other. Like some places in Central America, like El Salvador borders Guatemala. I mean, not many people are moving. It's like if you go from El Salvador to Guatemala, you're not really going up
that is
much,
correct.
right?
And you can say, wait, they all speak Spanish. Why they don't
around
melt? There's a fusion there, and we have the, I don't know, Central American country. No, they're specific cultures, and they speak Spanish, and they have more or less the same religion. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
in Central America, you do see some movement from some of the poorer countries in Central America into Mexico to work, and you're right. There's much less of an integration difficulty, let's say, because Mexicans and Guatemalans are not, I mean, many of them are of the same background, like mestizo, European, indigenous, mixed racially, and also Catholic and Spanish speaking.
Yes,
right. Whereas you've got in your country, there's a linguistic difference, right? Haitians speak a different language. That's one thing. And the racial differences are sort of obscure and hard for me to understand, because when I go to the Dominican Republic, I see a lot of people who look just like Haitians, right? And so it's strange when I talk to Haitian people here in Montreal, when they talk about Dominicans, that they sometimes will call them racist. And I always ask them, like, how can they be racist when half of their own people look just like you? Like, I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense.
And it's important to remember that we have migration. Maybe at the turn of 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, from people from other islands, English islands. I mean, and they were black also. And if you see in a zone, in the Dominican zone, on the northeast, let's say Samaná, you are going to find people from English heritage. They're black. They have their churches. We call it churches here. They're usually, evangelicals and all that. And
they're not Catholics. That's interesting.
No.
Yeah.
The old folks speak English.
Wow.
Now, it's a long time ago. Many of them have regretfully passed away. But there's another culture there, and they have integrated quite
well into the Spanish language and culture and all that.
Yes, and we call them
Los Americanos de Samaná, aren't they?
No. We call them cocolos. I will explain why. Because they come from an island called Tortola, like turtle dove, like something like that. In Spanish, it's Tortola, and maybe we could not say Tortola, and people say Cocolo, but they are part of the Dominican Republic. I mean, they're Dominicans.
Yeah,
and they have their cultural contribution, and we have integrated quite well. Yeah, I mean, there's a difference.
I think that's really cool. And the other, what I hear from what you're saying is that your country is able to bring in outsiders, including blacks, and integrate them into your social structure. And there's not really any, problem necessarily. I mean, there must be some people who are racists or whatever, but it's but what you're saying is that, like, is you're adding to this idea that, and I would also add that many Haitians have also done the same thing. I mean, there are many people who now call themselves Dominicans who have Haitian origins, and they would call them. Fanny is an example, right? I think there might be a difference though, because I think if your family came from one of the English-speaking islands versus if your family came from Haiti, would there be more social capital, which is to say you'd be more proud to talk about the English origin island ancestors than the Haitian ones? I don't know if you understand my question. Is it less socially acceptable to admit to being Haitian in origin in some way because of all these historical animosities?
That could be an explanation. There's have been some historic factual events. we're not citing or assigning blame. Okay, there have been historical facts, and I want to mention two of them, if I may.
Go ahead.
For example, as you know, we had in 1937, maybe we do not have figures, specific figures or exact numbers, but there was I don't know, massacre you want to call it, or killing of Haitians.
Mass killing, you could say,
yeah,
something like that, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Can I just ask you something quickly about this? Because we were talking about this before we went on camera. And just to be clear about the facts, it's not known. It is known that some kind of a bad event took place, and my Fanny's and Fanny's father Juan told me that the soldiers had orders. Their orders were go to the border and kill every black man that doesn't speak Spanish. Apparently, that's what he said they were ordered to do. Now, I don't know where he got that from. He's a very smart guy. He reads a lot, so he must have read it in a book somewhere. Now, we don't know how many people were murdered, but the estimates are just incredibly wildly different. The low estimates are, I think I read as low as 35 people or something, up to in the tens of thousands, 10, 15,000.
Yeah,
it's not.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
but I just wanted to ask you, what exactly precipitated it? Is it known? Like, were there migrants coming across the border and there was tension, or was it just something that the dictator wanted to do?
I don't know if this is an excuse or
I'm not making an excuse. I'm just trying to find out what happened, because I don't know.
Not mine or yours. If it's an historical excuse, it seems that the border was not too much well guarded. There was too much immigration, and they were occupation of a lot of territories that may be the historical excuse.
So in other words, Haitian people were coming across the border and building farms and kind of occupying things without permission from either landowners or the Dominican Republic government, something like that.
It seems to be the excuse or the more
reasoning, because you're right that it could have been an excuse too, is what right?
It could be a fact, it could be an excuse, but there's
even if it's true, it's not a reason to go and massacre.
No. And I want to say this right from. I don't care if it's 5,000, 10,000, and one person. One person is one too many.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I don't care if they're Haitian, Dominicans, they're human beings.
That's
there was no reason for that. Okay. This is another mindset. We're talking 1937.
Long time ago.
It was a dictatorship here, and as a matter of fact, Trujillo had very, very good relationships with Haiti's president at that time. I think it was the Stadium of Vincent. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yes, I mean this was settled economically. There was a payment.
Wow, I didn't know that. So did Trujillo have anything to do with it? So he didn't know, his officers just may have gone rogue or something? Like, is that known? Do you understand? Like, was this something that they did? Because it was soldiers that did it, right? Is that the charge?
Yes, most definitely it was the military.
Okay, it was the army. But Trujillo may not have been involved in that decision process, if there was a decision process. I don't know.
I don't think nothing escaped.
That's true. He was. He knew everything that went on. Yeah,
I don't want to make excuses from him. But what I understand is in this thing with the military, and I don't want to cast aspersions
on the army.
It was another time. Yes, the army mainly. It was another time. I don't know what they were thinking, but if they did it. They were doing what they were told, right or wrong. That's sort of now we have a very modern aspect of military. Now you have people that do not follow orders blindly.
Yeah.
It was another time.
Yeah.
Now we have some
Yeah.
sort of democratic armies that I don't know if it's it defeat the purpose, correct? But that's what we have now. In that time, it was not different, and I'm not making an excuse.
I understand. Yeah. So just to sort of summarize that, basically that there were some illegal occupations of land going on in the years leading up to 1937 by people just coming across the border. The border was not that well defended. It was not being, and then there was tension as a result of that. And then some of the soldiers, perhaps with Trujillo's knowledge, decided to go and sort of, quote unquote, do something about it, to deal with this issue in some way. Right?
Yeah, most definitely there was an order. They did not act on their own. That cannot be.
All right. And then later on, obviously after, do you know how long, over what time frame it occurred? Like, is it known? Did it take a matter of weeks or days, or is there any knowledge about that? I mean, just how long it went on? Is that not known? I mean, it wasn't years, right? It wasn't like it went on for years, right?
No.
Yeah.
No. It was I think a matter of weeks.
Days or weeks, yeah. Okay. So that's one particular incident that clearly caused tension between the two countries. And as you pointed out, it was settled later financially. I mean, that sounds to me, just when I hear that, I think, okay, so the Dominican government paid the Haitian government a lot of money. How much did that actually help any of the victims of did any of that money ever filter down to the families of those murdered? Is there, I don't
that's I don't think so. That's a question.
But it was a way to settle up, like, because potentially the two countries could have gone to war over that, right? In theory.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that may have prevented that, right? Is that one way to think about that financial payment? That it was a way of saying, okay, some of our soldiers did this terrible thing. Here's a bunch of money, so we don't get more into a international incident, something like that, right? Is that one way to think about it? Okay. What was the other thing? You said you had two historical things you wanted to mention.
Yes, it was part of the multiple, incursions of Haitian military here in 1805. That's 1805. There was a historical event that it's known as El Degüello de Moca in Spanish. It's the beheading of Moca. Moca, it's a province in the Dominican Republic, in which there were atrocities.
This is atrocities by Haitian soldiers in this case.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Against, I guess, fellow soldiers and civilians. It's more or less documented. But those are facts that I'm pretty sure that they contribute to what I can say.
Modern Haitians learn about this massacre that happened in 1937, and modern Dominicans are taught about this atrocity in 1805.
Sure.
Right. So that's what you're saying. So the modern conception is sort of like, those bastards or whatever, they did that to our people, something like that. Is that what you mean? I'm not pointing any fingers. I'm just saying might explain some of the,
yes, of
animosity,
course, from either side,
right? From both sides,
I mean,
right?
And I don't think, and one, just a comment, the independence side of the history teaching here has been somewhat sweetened, somewhat devoid of some nationalism at this time. I don't know if that's an effort to appease.
Can I just ask you what you mean? Like, because I wanted to ask you about that. So in Dominican school children, when they're learning Dominican history, they must learn about the independence, where Dominicans fought for independence from Haiti in 1844 and expelled the Haitian occupiers. They must also learn about that 1805 thing, right, as well. Do they learn about the massacre at the border by Dominican soldiers in 1937?
they learn about that.
They do.
As
They
I
do.
mentioned,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
sorry, it was offline. As I mentioned, there are books about, there's a very famous one that's El Masacre se pasa pie. Sorry if I'm using Spanish.
No, it's okay.
And it's a novel regarding
Interesting.
that,
Wow.
the
Okay, so
massacre.
it's known. So Dominicans are aware that their ancestors also committed acts of. It's not unknown to them. I mean, I'm just sort of trying to think about it. Like in Japan, apparently, there's very, very poor teaching of the terrible atrocities committed by the Japanese army,
in
right?
World War II. Yes.
Yeah, in World War II, I mean, there's a little bit of it, but it's not very. I mean, most Japanese are not very aware of those things, and of course, in Korea and in China, they sure as hell know about the Japanese atrocities, right?
Oh,
They
yes.
learn about
They
them,
do,
right?
and they teach it.
And they teach them, and they should. I mean, and all that, and so perhaps the Japanese could do a better job there. I don't know. It sounds like your country is doing a pretty good job if Dominicans are aware of that. At least they know that they're not just sort of innocent victims historically of the right.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are reasons for the mistrust and the bad blood, if I may say it,
Yeah.
from either side. But and I don't want to get too much philosophical. I think that we need to study history. I mean, the facts.
Yeah, I agree.
If possible, devoid it from passion, side taking, and all that, because historic events happen for a cause.
Yeah.
For a reason, I mean.
Yeah.
I'm very, very in agreement that Haitians teach their history, their vision of the history, and the Dominicans teach, and the Koreans and the Chinese and the English and the Americans.
Canadians, yeah,
and I
everybody,
guess that in any of those, let's say, more prosperous countries and oldest democracies than ours, if you see an historic event, it's different from what the Americans, I mean the North American says, from the same event of what the English.
Oh,
say.
absolutely. There's different perspectives that
there are
people
different
have, right?
perspectives, but what I think that history, besides just being an account of what happened, need to dig in the reasons. Right. Because the reasons are there are reasons. Nothing happens because I don't like you.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to just ask you about, do you know about the Haitian school system, whatever does exist in Haiti? I mean, do they also learn about those three events? I mean, do you have any knowledge? I'm just curious if you know. You may not know. It's a different country, you know.
No, but I don't want to get too anecdotal, but there's a saying that I'm not saying this is true. I cannot say it's not true either. That there's a sort of teaching on the Haitian side that the island is one and indivisible.
Interesting. Wow.
I mean, I cannot say that for a fact.
I should ask some, because I have a friend, actually, Fanny and I have a friend who, he was born here. He's Canadian, but his family was from Haiti, and he went and lived there for his whole schooling, and then he came back here. So he went to school there. I should ask him about that, if that's taught, if he was taught that, because I mean,
that's something that we say on this side.
Right. Yeah.
that
right. Yeah. So that raises.
And it could make sense in the aspect that, yes.
Well, at one time it was. I mean, there was you specifically said that after there was the treaty, and then everything belonged to France, and then the French were kicked out. So there was a time when it did all belong technically to Haiti, right? I mean, that's a matter of historical fact, from 1805 to, or 1801 or whatever, to 1844, right?
1795, yes.
1795. That's a long period of time, right? That the entire island. So. So some of what it sounds like what you're getting at is that there's a term in English called revanchism. I don't know if you ever heard that, but it's the sense, and Hitler was motivated by this, and sort of like the idea that we had a great past. This is what motivated the Nazis. And we're going to go back and we're going to get revenge and take back what was ours to begin with. This is why, so there could be a sense in the Haitian population of, this was our island and everything, and we've been cheated out of it, kind of thing. Because I think peoples who are, weak socioeconomically often develop very conspiratorial mindsets about the world. Well, one of the things I've noticed with Haitian people when I talk to them is I'm often amazed how many of them will tell me things like, oh, well, Haiti's this incredibly rich country and it's being manipulated by, the French and the Americans and all this kind of stuff. And it's always like there's these conspiracies going on to keep the country poor somehow, right? And the problem with that is that there's some truth to it. Of course, the Americans have invaded Haiti a number of times, and the French, blockaded the country till 1947. They made them pay reparations and all this kind of stuff. So there's an element of truth. But the problem with that mindset is that it prevents them from seeing how their own, like the problems that they're creating for themselves, right? They can sort of externalize them so I wonder if there's a little bit of that sense among some of like, our country is being manipulated by these big, great powers, and we once owned the whole island, and, it's rightfully ours, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? I wonder if there's some of that among some in Haiti, right? Again, we're not trying to be too, partisan here. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to say, again, the Haitian people are wonderful people, the ones I'm familiar with.
Well, I want to say this right up front. This is one of the hardest working people that I know of, the Haitians. They work hard. Yeah. Here, they work very, very hard. And they're just people.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
There's
yeah.
What can I say? I mean,
I don't want to. It's not to like my contention about that mindset is because a person could be an extremely good, decent. Because I have the same experience with the Haitians I know. Many of them extremely hardworking, and also an interesting thing about Haitians I've noticed is a very quirky sense of humor. I don't know if you've noticed this. A kind of it's sort of an irreverent kind of a humor that I've sensed from that culture somehow too. That I don't know how to articulate exactly to you. I couldn't give you an example of it somehow, but it's just something I've noticed. But a person could be all of those things, or a person could be, have a very quirky sense of humor, be a very hardworking, and be very morally good person and good with his family, and still think that there's a conspiracy to keep Haiti down. Do you know what I mean? Like that. Those things could go on in the same brain, even, I think, if you know what I mean, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So it's hard to know how to think about that, but. Yeah, I wanted to move on to some of the individual cases and get your thoughts on them. I made some notes of them. There was a case in about 2013 where a Haitian migrant called Jean Harry, who was murdered, I believe, in Santiago, and there were pictures going around on social media here, like among friends I have on social media who are Haitian and Haitian origin people, had these photos because he was killed and he was strung up like kind of like posed like he was lynched, right? And it's a very interesting case. And I remember I looked in, because when you first see that image, it's like, oh my God, you see this sort of black man hanging from a pole. It evokes all these emotions from those of us who in North America who have associations of that with like, the Jim Crow South and all this kind of white supremacist hate and all this stuff. So it was very emotional to see that. I remember at the time I had one of my former students, and we were sort of chatting on Facebook, and he was all incensed, very upset. And I could sort of understand. He's like, this has to stop. It's terrible. And it's terrible what they're doing to our people over there and all this kind of stuff, because he was a Haitian. And then I actually did some research, and I found out that it turned out that he had been murdered before he was even strung up. He was killed, and then they hung him up somehow. I don't know why. Maybe but And apparently the police had done some investigating, and they had interviewed some people who were suspects, other Haitian migrants, apparently. He was an immigrant from Haiti, the guy. but they didn't have enough evidence to charge them. It sort of looked like there had been a dispute between some of the migrants, and a couple of them had killed the other one and robbed him, and then they may have hung him up to sort of distract people or something. I don't know. Do you know about this case, and do you have any other information about it that you could add here? Because it was sort of something that inflamed things for a while. At that time, about 10 years ago, there was a kind of
it brought some noise, some international noise and declarations from side, and I think, as you mentioned, it was not the investigation. I don't think it was conclusive or definitive.
What?
Definitive. I mean, they have an outcome, conclusion from that investigation. But I know that there have been fights, disputes we have disputes between Dominicans here. Go figure, between Dominicans and Haitians. It's bound to happen. I mean,
well, people. There are people together in the same. The other thing I wanted to mention, what I wanted to just confirm what you're saying. Of course, there's going to be conflict sometimes because people sometimes fight with each other, and some of those, if you have a lot of people who come, just have by the numbers of people, there's going to be some that incur, right? But the other thing is, many of the Haitian immigrants tend to, because they're poor, they tend to go into the lower social strata of, they go into the poorer neighborhoods and areas and so on. Right. So that's probably an aggravating factor in what you're saying. Sorry, I interrupted you, but go ahead.
No. What I mentioned, that frictions are bound to happen. I mean, between people from the same country, then go figure, people from different countries with communication barriers and history and whatever. I don't think it had anything to do with racism, because it's hanging someone from a pole or a tree. I don't think it's unheard of. I have seen it very much with suicides.
Right.
But it's not like a way for people to, I don't know, sometimes happen that a minor get raped and people gets infuriated, and if they get hold of the rapist, then something happens to him.
Right.
I have not seen people hanging from or noticed that news of hangings. They
it was a one-time thing. Like this particular thing happened.
Yes, and as you mentioned, it appeared to be staged.
Right.
Because let's remember, and let's be clear, there are people making money with hate. Trying to inflame the sentiment, right or wrong. And I don't think that's positive. But I know that there are people in the Dominican Republic and in Haiti also trying to things like this happen, because it's
well, maybe they benefit from it because
of course. That's what I mentioned, making money.
I know in the US there's a whole sort of industry of people, of lawyers and so on, who kind of like feed off this, right? Because there is sometimes the police do go too far, and there's sort of, there's this kind of problem of, so there must be a similar thing where there's a kind of entire group of people who feed off this, and journalists and lawyers and stuff like that. I don't know.
Yes. And for us, the hurtful part of this is those are Dominican journalists and Dominican lawyers. I mean, I don't know what we're going to gain with having a civil unrest here. I don't think we're going to win anything with that. But going back to the hanging, I want to make this clear. There's no racial tension here. I mean,
it was not. I don't think it was racialized at all. I think it was meant to look like it was some sort of
like that. But there's and I have this thought. I want to get it out here. There's instances that look like racial discrimination, and unfortunately, and I know many people agree with me, many don't, but I don't think we have racial discrimination here. We have economic discrimination here.
Yeah.
I mean, people do not see in the same eye the rich people and the poor people. And I don't think that if you are poor, if you are blonde, blue eyes, and all the racial phenotype of white people, I mean, you're going to get treated well. I mean, and that there's something that I have observed, that there's, I don't think, I mean, you mentioned we're mixed.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Is how exactly, if there is racial discrimination, how exactly does it work when half the population is half one or the other, and the other, you know, and then another quarter is black and another quarter is white?
Yeah, and it's not only Haitian. We have Spanish ascendancy.
Yeah,
Italian. There are people from Middle East here. A lot of people. A lot of
Chinese.
Names.
Chinese minority.
Yeah. Chinese.
Yeah.
Oh,
true.
You mean you see? So there's. I don't think we're racist country.
One thing I often tell to my students that my students have never heard before, but it's a way of saying what you're saying, is that people think that in this country and in the US that there's sort of racial discrimination, but it's not really racial. It's that Black people, and in this country, Indigenous people and also Black people, tend more often to be, it correlates with poverty, right? And so the police are more likely, and so on, and crime and so on is more likely to happen among the poor. And if the poor happen to be more likely to be Black, that's not a racial thing, that's a poverty thing. And my students can have really difficult time understanding this. It's like, they're like, well, what do you mean? And it's, you know, but the reality is, and this would be true in your country as well, that the lower social strata, the poorer parts of the population, probably are Black, more likely to be Black people, just by correlation, right? I mean, it's not racism necessarily. It's just that's how it ends up, right? Because there are also very rich people who are Black in your country. I mean, Fanny, you were talking about the Samana, the English-speaking people. Fanny my wife has some relatives who are the King family. Maybe you know them.
Yeah.
They're from Samana originally. Their family name is King. They speak Spanish now, but I assume that they descend from these immigrants from other English-speaking islands, or perhaps the US or something. I don't know. But they are extremely well off. I mean, we went to their house and they're living in this beautiful gated community, and they're very well off, and they're not white, you know. So I mean, like, this idea that rich people are white in the Dominican Republic, and it's just not true. But Black people are probably more likely to be poor, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Statistically, right?
Completely makes sense. And yes, there are many people here very rich, and they're Spanish and Italian, most of them descendants. But there is, I don't see a barrier. As if you work hard and have the opportunity.
That's right. You can. I mean, look at Fanny's family, the King family. They worked their way up basically as immigrants from St. Thomas, wherever they came from, right? You know.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not. I mean, this is not to deny that cases of racism may exist, but I think that what you're saying is the idea that there's this racial social
systematic
is not true. It's just not true, right? Even though race will correlate with poverty fairly frequently, right? That seems reasonable to assume as well, right?
Yes, and it has a historical origin. The means of production were in the hands of the people that colonized this country.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's not fair, but that's a fact.
And their descendants maintained some of that wealth and passed it on and so on. And then, of course, the descendants of the slaves are in the lower social strata. Why would that surprise anybody? Because they started off as their ancestors were slaves, right? Like
yes, and they had nothing. They didn't even have themselves.
Right,
They
exactly.
were slaves.
They were property of others, right? So why would it surprise anyone that Black Dominicans are more likely to be poor than non-Black Dominicans, right? Just more likely. But again, there's no racial barrier. Fanny's family is, again, the King family. They're very dark Black and they're extremely wealthy, right? So there's no sort of barrier like no Blacks allowed or anything like that. It's completely.
No, I cannot deny that you can find some stupid racists.
Yeah,
because it's mainly stupidity and ignorance.
Yeah,
that still.
So what you're saying is, what you're really saying is that there's largely, if you work hard and kind of just play it straight, you can usually pull yourself up. If you look at people who kind of build themselves up, and regardless of their race, they kind of can. It's probably hard to do, but you can, right? It's a place where it's possible to, right? You're not held down by your race, right?
No, you're not.
Yeah.
But you have to fight your way through.
Yeah, well, just like everywhere, people have to work hard in order to.
Oh yes, right. Studying and being in the right place and
that's right.
Working hard.
Yeah,
working hard. I cannot deny that as time goes by, the inequality once again make the opportunities scarce. I mean, people have to do more, and that's why people migrate.
That's true.
We're going back to that point. And that's a point there that it's going to play some part in this.
Well, many Dominicans migrate mostly to the United States, as I understand it, for economic reasons, right? Half of New York City is Dominican. It's crazy,
There
that. My cousin once pointed out how there's this weird, like, because I noticed once when I was in Puerto Rico that there were all these Dominican migrants working there, and I was telling my cousin this. He said, "Yeah," and then all the Puerto Ricans are in New York. There's this kind of weird pecking order. The Haitians are going to the Dominican Republic, and the Dominicans are going to Puerto Rico, and the Puerto Ricans are going to New York.
Well, that's a whole conspiracy theory there.
It's not a conspiracy. It's just to say, like, because that's almost like there's almost like a stratifying. In New York is richer than Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico is richer than the Dominican Republic, and the Dominican Republic is richer than Haiti. Right? It's kind of
no. I don't mean that's your conspiracy theory, but there exists. They're trying to move around the population.
What is this? I've never heard.
I mean, the WHO is that unknown new world order. And whatnot, the same thing from always. I mean, that's shady.
Right.
Groups.
So this is the Davos clique elite types. Is that something like that? Yeah. Right.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Let's not go down too far down that rabbit hole. But
no. I just want to mention because it exists. I mean, that theory.
I do know that my own prime minister Justin Trudeau is very much in that sort of internationalist mindset, and I don't think there's a big conspiracy, but I do know that I really want my country to be my country first, more than being part of the world order, and there's actually nothing wrong with saying that people should take care of their own country first and then think about the rest of the world, right?
Yeah, that's not racist and not nationalist at all.
It really, there's an ancient idea in Catholicism, I believe, that I forget the name of it, that you should expand outward. Like, first you should try and take care of yourself as an individual, and then you should try and take care of your family and do the best you can, and then your immediate community should come after that, around you where you live, and then your city, right? And then from there, maybe your province, like in Canada, we have these big provinces, right? And then from there, your country, and then after that, maybe into the world, should be the last thing. If you like, and that seems like a reasonable way to think about how to orient yourself.
I think if it's Catholic, very well, but I think that's the nature of belonging to a community. Right. I mean, you have to take care of your own first. Then the bigger step, the community, then my country, and
On
then
up from
once
there.
we have I don't know, all that we need, then let's take care of
Everybody, other people.
everybody else,
Yeah.
and all are welcome.
What's
But
strange, what's strange is to say something like that. Like, first of all, saying that it's a Catholic thing, immediately some people would be sort of repulsed by that. Something like people in my family, maybe, or just people I know would be, oh my God, you can't, that can't be good because it's a sort of a right-wing Catholic thing. It must be bad. But if you just think about that as a proposition, what is wrong with doing that? Because if everybody did that everywhere, wouldn't the world be a better place, right? And, right? If you just think about it from a,
and you should not have to leave your country, because I don't think that no one in the right mind and in a country that there's opportunity, maybe not money not rolling down the street, but opportunity, will leave his country. Why?
Yeah.
Why do you, for example, we have in this last like 10, 12 years, a heavy migration to Canada. But who's migrating to Canada lastly? Professionals.
Yeah.
People that have a skill.
Well-educated people.
There.
Yeah, right. People with education, right?
Yes, and you need to learn English if you don't know, and learn French. But people is migrating, and not to disparage Canada. I would love to be there, but
you're welcome to visit anytime. We'd love to have you.
Thank you. Yeah. It's very, very hard for someone from the Caribbean to, for example, adapt. I'm sorry once again to take your country as an example, to adapt to a hard winter.
Yeah.
Who wants that? I mean, being born in the Caribbean, when you have sun like
all the time,
10 hours a day.
Yeah.
I mean, migrating is not a joke.
Well, it depends.
People do it because they need to do it.
Yeah, well, it depends. I mean, it's very case specific, right? I mean, my brother went and lived in the United States about 25 years ago. He lives in, because many Canadians leave Canada mostly for the United States too, right? I mean, this is, well, you're talking about this as though people from rich countries don't leave their own countries, but we do sometimes, right? Americans sometimes leave and go live in other countries as well. So in many cases, it's just, in my brother's case, it was, as you mentioned earlier, it had to do with education, and he was well educated, and he was there was economic problems in Canada in the 1990s, and there were more opportunities for him in the US, and many of his friends went and lived there as well, and so and he loves there. He's a dual citizen now, and it's really great for him, right? So I don't know if it's really necessary. I actually am very pro-immigration if people want to do it. I think what you're saying is if a person feels like they have no choice but to migrate.
Yes, and that's is in these countries, I mean Latin America and the Caribbean, that is what pushes.
Well, certainly going back to the Haitian thing, many of the people I see in your country who are from Haiti, they are the very poorest of the poor. They tend to be, you'll see them on construction sites, cutting sugarcane, selling sunglasses on the streets in Santo Domingo, things like that. So these are people often who don't even know how to speak French, which means their education must be very, very poor if they can't even speak French. So my assumption is that they probably, I mean, I don't know whether they really chose to leave Haiti, but I do know that when they go to live in your country, I've heard that from Fanny's father has told me that they tend to come in a group. Usually there'll be like 4 or 5 guys will come, often from the same village, and they'll work. They'll work as a unit, a crew together, like on construction and things like that, right? And usually one of them learns how to speak Spanish well enough to be able to negotiate contracts, because it's all cash, right? These are illegal migrants. And, they'll work in things like demolition and construction and things like that, and building and all that. And apparently they can make anywhere from $200 to $500 a month, which if you're from a tiny village in Haiti and you're used to eking out on $20 or $30 a month, that's actually a decent step up, right? I mean, that's, and you can send some of your money back to your people back in Haiti. Like it's a way of maintaining. I'm convinced that the Haitian migrants living in your country are basically the extremely weak state of the Haitian economy is being propped up by that. Do you know what I mean? All those monies flowing back are helping people in Haiti.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah,
Most
and so I honestly don't really see what's wrong with that unless there's some kind of a negative effect, because we can also talk about maybe some of these people, if they're getting involved in criminality, or if they're, you know what I mean? There's a larger discussion. Maybe it's causing social disruption in Haiti and the Dominican Republic. I don't know. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that.
Well, the and let me tell you that. Let me tell you something. Haitians are involved in much more activities than construction nowadays. I mean, I was riding an Uber taxi like 2 weeks ago, and the driver was Haitian.
Yeah, interesting.
So that tells you two things. To drive a car, especially for Uber, you have to have a license,
background check, a
valid license, a criminal background, and all that. So they're getting legalized in some way. I mean, not only I know there's a bunch of the majority is illegal immigration, but there's
also legal. Yeah, there are also people.
Oh, yes, there's a pathway. I don't know, 4 or 5 years, 6 years. There's a pathway. They're getting documents as residents now, and that's what's allowing them to maybe open a bank account, something that some time ago they could not do. Formalize, get into the formalized economy. Well, most of the complaints of the Dominican is that there's an overwhelm the health system and the education system.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
so services like schools and hospitals and so on
they're getting
in some areas are just they can't keep up. Yeah, that's a legitimate concern. That's a concern. Here in Montreal, we have a lot of immigrants from many parts of the world, and our primary and secondary schools are just jammed right up because many of these people from other parts of the world have more children, right? So there's a and that's not, I mean, that's just an issue to deal with. It's technically complicated. How do you do that when you have classes of 40, 50 students and the teachers are overworked and they can't find qualified teachers and all that, right? That's
exactly what happened in here at the start of the school year. Here, a couple of weeks ago, there are provinces or towns that have not started the school year because there's literally nowhere to put the students.
Is that right? Wow.
I mean that's
And that's in communities that have high migrant populations. Is that where they typically are located? Is that
yes. In the east, where there are, but most of them are mechanized now. Cane.
They're mechanized now, really? They're mechanized?
Yes, much of them are mechanized. There are, of course, braceros. I mean, the people
cutters,
that
guys that cut. Just to be clear, what we're talking about, the eastern part of the Dominican Republic, La Romana, Punta Cana, is where there's a lot of flat plains and sugarcane fields.
That is correct.
And traditionally, a lot of the Haitian migrants and other low social strata Dominicans as well, and immigrants from other countries. Juan's father was an immigrant. Fanny's grandfather was an immigrant from St. Thomas and worked at Central Romana. Right. So traditionally they would cut the sugar cane, but you're telling me that there are machines doing that now? That's interesting.
Yes, there are some ingenios or sugar cane factories. Yes, ingenios that they have the sugar cane plantation. I mean, there is not the 100%, but there are some that are mechanized. Not that they do not need the labor. But
they probably need some labor and maybe more skilled labor, guys that can cut and run the machines, kind of thing, with more skills and are maybe more highly paid. Is that something like that? Probably is happening, I'm guessing. From what I understand about it was interesting what you were saying about the taxi driver is that a lot of Haitian migrants too, the ones with some education often work in the hotels. because many of them have more language skills than the Dominicans, right? Because they'll know Spanish because they've come and lived there. They know French, and sometimes they even know English. Like if they have any education, they at least they know a few other languages. And I've noticed that in the hotels, often the guys working in the hotels, even like in well-paid jobs, are from Haiti as well, just because and that partly for linguistic reasons.
Much of that is plainly true. It's the education. And let me tell you, there's a big population of Haitian students in universities.
I
mean, and it's I know that there's I know there are universities in Haiti, but maybe the civil unrest and the problems they're pushing the students here, and we have not all the Haitian migration are poor.
That's right.
I mean, there are well-to-do families also that they send their kids starting here mainly to the
to
university.
Immigrate, basically, right? I mean, it's basically a way of immigrating, isn't that?
Yes,
right?
and I have seen some well-to-do families. They speak French, some of course speak Creole, and in the supermarkets here.
So I've noticed. I hear Creole all the time on the streets in Santo Domingo when I've been there, and also French sometimes as well. You hear it very frequently.
Yes.
In fact, ironically, Fanny's family, the King family, I remember one time we were there, and their nanny, their maid, I forget her name now. And they were mentioning, and they said, "Oh, she's talking in her language." I said, "What language?" "Oh, she speaks Creole or something." And and it's all through the population. It's kind of all around, across the population as a generality. But I wanted to ask you, just about that taxi driver, the Uber driver. Did he speak Spanish well?
Now that you mentioned, we didn't exchange
didn't talk much
because he was following the instructions of the application.
Right.
And I'm sorry to say that, but I think he was afraid that I noticed that he was Haitian.
Oh my God, poor guy.
I don't know why.
Yeah, that's
maybe some people just get out from the car. I don't have a reason to do that because he's a legitimate Uber driver.
Yeah.
But I noticed that. And that's what.
How do you know? Just to be clear, I mean, was it the way he spoke? Was it something about the way he looked? I mean,
yes, the accent.
The accent, right? So he said enough words in Spanish that you could hear.
Yes, that I could. And
I love that. Sometimes when Haitians, when they're speaking Spanish with a really heavy accent, it's hilariously funny. There was a security guard at one of the buildings once, and the guy sitting there, and he started talking in Spanish, and I was like, "Wow, that guy's got a really crazy accent." Like it immediately hit me. It was like that guy must be from Haiti.
And one dead giveaway was that the Uber application was in French.
Was in French. Okay,
yes, it was. The robot was speaking in French. Oh, okay, I know now.
That's great.
So, yeah, we didn't exchange, but it's.
But you noticed it, yeah. It was something. I wanted to return to one thing quickly though before I move on to some other stuff. Is this thing that happened with the guy who was strung up? That seemed to be part of a kind of a wave of things. There was a girl who was raped. This is about 10 years ago.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, has that wave, first of all, was that a wave or was that just normal? Is there another wave now? Do these things flare up every once in a while, these kind of tensions in the streets between?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that flares up. And sometimes it happens, and I'm very suspicious of when those things
flare
happen.
up. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
For example, let me tell you. A couple of weeks ago, a Haitian migrant was employee on a farm, and they're pointing at him as the murderer of 3 Dominican people
really?
on the farm.
Boy.
Okay, so.
Is this so? In other words, 3 Dominicans were murdered on that farm or near that farm.
Yes,
and he's being accused of those murders. Is there any evidence that he did?
a Haitian worker that was dismissed like 2 or 3 days ago because of aggressive behavior.
Okay.
But what happened afterwards, that some houses were burned.
Oh my God.
And Haitian.
Oh my God.
Fortunately, there was no casualties.
So those were
on that.
local people in that community, probably, who were angry or something, right?
Yes, and one of one of the fatalities was uncle of a former defense ministry.
Wow. Here. Okay, so high up the political chain.
Yes, and it has a lot of visibility because it was the uncle from the former general.
Wow.
I mean, and what came after was the burning of those houses, houses.
Yeah.
And some Haitians, I think they left the place. Fortunately, there's no news of any Haitian being murdered. I mean,
wow. So that's something that flared up recently. Just
this happens like 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
They're trying to locate
Okay, so is this? I'm just trying to get a handle. Like, how often do these things happen, or do they happen in? It sounds like they happen kind of in clusters. Like from what I can see, some person will be murdered, and then there's a Haitian accused of it, and then something like what you just described. It seems like I've heard other cases like that, but. Do they come in a kind of a wave where like a bunch of things happen and then it's quiet for a while? Or is it just sort of constant that you hear things in the news? Or I don't know if you understand my question. Is it something that is possible to see a pattern to in some way? Or is there no way to predict? I don't know.
I don't think there's a way to predict. But I think that some of those things are magnified.
The media.
For political gain or a distraction from anything else that is happening. But it did not escalate. I mean, burning a house is escalation enough.
Okay? But beyond that, that was the end of it. That stopped.
That is correct. Yeah. And it gets sometimes disheartening because well, I know they need the job. Yeah. And people, let me tell you, I'm sorry. I mean, most of the construction workers are Haitians. That's a niche that they have. Most of the farm hands are Haitians. Mm-hmm. That's something that they have too.
Yeah.
So when these violence episodes happen, and violence only get more violence and more hate and more mistrust and more stories that are not confirmed, but anyone assume it's true.
Yeah.
It really like see I mean, you see that this is not going to end well.
Yeah.
Well, I would hate for our countries to be.
I'm trying to get at is like it sort of seems like a constant thing, but do you think it's escalating over time? Because this case of the guy being strung up, that was like in 2013. That was a really long time ago, So, or 2014 or something. So, do you think it's gradually getting worse over time, or do you think it seems like it's just kind of bumbling along, and these things are happening sometimes, and then they go down again? I don't know.
Yes, I think that nothing like that has happened afterwards. I mean, that the strong up of the poor man.
Yeah.
So I see that as I mentioned, there's too much interest in play.
Yeah. Well, one thing I just wanted to say too is that you pointed out to me once, and you sent me when we were talking about this online once, that it's not unique to the Haitians in the Dominican Republic getting aggressed or murdered or raped and then return, all that stuff. Sometimes on the other side of the border that happens as well. There was a terrible case. I think you sent me those articles about an engineer who was working in Haiti, and he was found murdered by a river. This was maybe 5 years ago, and it was terrible. Right. It looked like his his driver and his bodyguard had betrayed him or something. That seemed to be what I understood from the news article, that looked like he had taken him down the end of a road and they brutally murdered him and stole all his stuff and everything. And he was just, I mean, he was an engineer. He was just a guy he was contracted to go to Haiti to develop, I don't know, build a bridge or something. And, there's not very good human capital in Haiti, right? So this was a person who had some skills that could do some of those things. From what I understand, a lot of the businesses in Haiti, a lot of the importation of stuff is Dominican business people doing that. I don't know if that's still true now because of the political problems in Haiti. Maybe you can talk a bit about that, because the political situation is very bad in Haiti these days, right? But
yes, and it seems like I don't know if I mentioned this offline. You see the situation in Haiti, and you don't perceive, besides the prime minister or the person working as prime minister or have the title, speaking, and you don't see the traces of a government.
Right.
I mean, and I'm not trying to be disparaging.
No, it's just a matter of reality. They don't have a state structure of any kind.
There's a chaos. I mean, some group are blocking the entrance of oil. I mean, gasoline. They have many people from the border have to cross the border to Dajabon, that's a province near the border, to buy gasoline to go back to Haiti.
Because the gasoline distribution is not working in Haiti, so they have to come
correct.
in.
There are hospitals that have had to shut down.
They can't even run their generators, man. People must be
because there's no oil,
wow. So it's basically total dysfunction right now in that country. It has been since the president was murdered? I think it was last year.
It got very, very much worse. It got worse since the UN left Haiti.
Okay. When was that? When did the UN exit Haiti? Do you know? Was that a few years ago?
Approximately after the earthquake.
That was a long time ago. The earthquake was what, 2011, didn't it?
2010, yes. Well, it's been maybe not so long ago. I have to check, but it deteriorated. Wow. I mean, the UN, the I don't know, blue helmets.
So they were maintaining. So the UN and the blue helmets and all these aid organizations were maintaining some semblance of order. They were doing the job of what the Haitian government should be doing in some senses, right? Which is maintaining order and running the police and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, and they keep the gangs at bay.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's only so much the gangs can do when there's actual soldiers on the street who are from Italy, Canada.
And they fought battles there. I mean,
wow. Really?
They killed people.
I didn't know that.
I mean, for example, in the neighborhoods, violent neighborhoods, Cité Soleil.
Cité Soleil, yeah. So Cité Soleil is just a very extremely poor neighborhood in Port-au-Prince, I believe.
Correct, and they had to fight the gangs there. Wow. I mean, I don't mean they murdered people, but they had to fight the gangs there and bring peace.
So I just have a question about that. So basically, if a person is living in Port-au-Prince and doesn't live in a gated community, basically, you've got no police, and you probably live in an area where there might be a gang that runs that neighborhood or something, right? So maybe you have to pay, they come around and you have to give them money. Like, I'm trying to think how it works on the day-to-day. And then the gangs sometimes fight each other to take over territory so they can extort from the population. Is it something like that? Is that?
I couldn't say, because the times that I were in Haiti, of course, I was under, I have security with me.
Right.
It was for a telco there. And they provided security from the airport to the hotel. If you need to went to one of the project sites, you were accompanied by them.
Bodyguards and drivers and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
Right?
So I was mostly shielded from that reality. And I moved on think sort of well-to-do or peaceful
Yeah,
place.
I mean, not all of Haiti is in total chaos. Just to be clear, there must be places that have some security, right? There must be some areas that are relatively safe. Is that
yes,
fair to
that
say, right?
should be that way. But I at this time, what I see from the news, the gangs taking over, I'm not sure.
Wow.
And it deteriorated rapidly. I mean, where these guys came from? I mean,
Great
I know
question. Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, from what I understand, that this, just if we could talk a little bit about this, the murder of the president last year, it's the most obscure thing I've ever heard. There were these guys, apparently they took off to Miami afterwards. They were speaking English to each other, and some of them were Colombians. I mean, it was just
there are Colombians.
Can you talk a bit about this, because you know more about it than me? It was so strange.
For what I could gather from the news, it was definitely a hit job. I mean, it was not a coup d'etat or anything like that, because there was
not a coup d'etat. It was not. That's what you're saying.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Correctly, right. Because it's the people fought with the assassins. Some were caught. I mean, most of them were Colombians. They are in jail in Haiti. But the details on why it happened, who in the political realm, I mean,
the president or
the prime minister at that time, it's not very clear. Right, I mean, right. I think that the prime minister was dismissed after that and accused of participating in that.
Really?
Yeah, well, and after that, general.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, is it known why they were Colombians? So they must, like, what's you're suggesting is that there was an assassination, right? It was basically a political assassination, but it was not meant to topple the government. It was just want to get rid of that guy for reasons that we don't know. It's not known why.
That's the main thing. We don't know.
We just don't know
what happened. We know what transpires in the news and some commentator and something like that, but
it's not definitively known exactly what's going on.
Correct. There's no transparency. And after that, I have noticed that the things have deteriorated rapidly.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Rapidly.
Well, that sort of makes sense. Like, you know, the political assassination happens and there's kind of like a chill effect down, and you know, some people leave the country, and you know, there's a kind of a it really seems like, from what I understand about the longer arc of Haitian history, is that there've been times when it's like this. And often what happens is US Marines arrive, basically, when it gets like that, right? I mean, that seems to be, you know, like in the 1920s, American Marines showed up, and it's happened numbers of times in Haiti where and the French have come at different times. And and I'm wondering if maybe there's something like that that's going to happen that near future, if it's deteriorating. It's instability within the American realm, right? I mean, it's, you know, right? I don't know.
Yes, it will bring definitely instability, and that's what we in the Dominican side fear the most. Because if there's an all-out war there,
a civil war. You mean like a war within Haiti?
Among them, or some country or international community, UN or whatever. There's going to be fighting.
Yeah.
And the fighting, what brings is people displaced.
That's right. Yeah.
Refugees.
Well, yeah. So so you're probably seeing some of that already. You're probably seeing an upsurge of people.
An uptick of migration. Yes.
Yeah. Because people
running away
leaving, right? Because it's all screwed up, and there's these gangs going around. I'm trying to understand what that must look like if you're just living in a town or whatever. What do those gangs do? They don't sell drugs. People are too poor to consume drugs in Haiti, right? So I'm just wondering how they operate. They must extort the population to some extent, and then fight with other gangs for the right to go extort other areas, I suppose. Is that?
I don't will venture to say what what their activities are, but they're sure up to no good. They're heavily armed, heavily armed.
Where are they getting their arms from? I mean,
that's a good question. That's a good question.
That's
That's something that comes also from Haiti to the Dominican Republic. Not only people,
guns,
but a lot of arms.
Yeah, so
they're
guns,
very
it's not
well
just
armed.
So guns are smuggled across the border as well, is what you're saying into your country.
That happens frequently.
That's interesting.
And that's the kind of I don't know, lawlessness, if you want to talk, that affects, and I think it's really scaring people on this side.
I have to say,
what's going to happen.
I think it must be. I think it's very difficult for Canadians, if any Canadians are listening to this, to understand the sense I get from Dominicans, in the sense that living in a country next to a country that's so messed up as Haiti is, right? It's just there's a sense in the Dominican population of constant sort of worry there, I think, of like, what if things really blow up in Haiti? Well, is the army going to have to go and sort of fortify the border? Is it going to mean perhaps a war? Like, if there's a civil war there, is it going to somehow spill onto your territory for reasons we can't understand?
Exactly.
Now, right?
Imagine that some of those gangs want to cross over here
and start operating. Yeah, it's boy, oh boy.
The army will have to face them.
Yeah, so
then it
becomes an international incident, right?
Yes,
and
it comes then like a war between two countries,
right? Exactly.
Between a criminal organization and an army from other country. No, it's Dominican Republic is attacking or defending from Haiti, whatever you want to, and that's not only the optics of what's going to happen after that.
It's a great question. I mean, it's one of these things that I really think Canadians particularly have trouble understanding, because, we live in a very, very safe and secure country, because, I mean, Canada is much more safe and secure generally and richer than even the Dominican Republic, right? It's absolutely nothing like Haiti. I mean, Haiti's impossible to imagine, I think, for the Canadians who've never been there, right? Because, I mean, some of our citizens go there, some of us have. But I think that just it must be. I think Canadians have trouble understanding that sentiment that I sense from Dominicans sometimes. That sort of concern. And I think they tend to ignore that. Canadians ignore that when they look at the other issues that crop up. They sort of look at. This country, we tend to. I think the Haitian view is more commonly exposed in Canada for a couple of reasons. One is that Canadians tend to look for, it's very much a kind of a left-leaning country, so it looks for people that are victimized, right? That tends to be the narrative, right? You look around the world and you say, oh, this group of people must be victims. We're going to sort of feel sorry for them. And there are victims in the world, right? And there are Haitians who are victims, and that's a real thing. So there's that, right? So the focus is more on Haiti, right? But the other thing is, we have more citizens who descend from Haitians than citizens who descend from Dominicans. We have a larger Haitian community too, right?
Correct.
So that tends to color the perspective, especially in the French language media, right? More in the French language media. In the English language media, I think there's just, there's a kind of a, Haiti is looked at just like everywhere, everybody else in the world, and it looks at Haiti as this basket case mess of a country that we should all feel sorry for, which, that's not an inaccurate description of it. But
no, but what I'm afraid is no one is doing nothing to really help them.
What do you think we could do? Maybe we could, as we move to closing, what would be some ways that really could help Haiti move into the future? And is that your responsibility? It probably isn't the Dominicans' responsibility necessarily, but do you have any ideas? You mentioned to help them. I don't know if that...
mainly institutions.
Right.
I mean, that my humble opinion, that problem will not be solved by throwing money at them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, boy. It might make it worse, in fact. It might actually make things worse.
Could come the fighting for the money.
Well, then, they start fighting for the money. Right, exactly. So you get competition for all that money flowing in from the outside.
Yes, I mean, institutions. They need institutions. Uh,
Can you just specify like what the most important institution I would imagine would be security forces of some kind, right? That would be the number one thing. Police and military, is that the number one thing they should be right? Is that
yes, most definitely. And I don't know about the state of the health and the education. When I went to Haiti, I saw, and that amazed me. I mean, there were schools, little private schools in every street. And you see the boys and girls with their uniforms.
That's nice.
Very nice.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I saw, well, but there's an education here. People are pursuing education.
That's cool.
I mean, they want it.
Of course they do.
Many
parents of children want their kids to be educated. It's just
exactly
a natural thing. Right?
Exactly. And I saw places where they taught English, and the valedictorian was in English speaking, and that's nice. That's they want to progress.
Yeah.
They need an environment to progress. I mean, and this is maybe I don't know if it's going to sound awful. I mean, I think they need to have institutions besides diplomacy.
Yeah.
Besides
internally, you mean inside the country?
Yes, not diplomacy like going taking the Dominican Republic to the United Nations or accusing some other country that is not helping or attacking them. They need to care for the people. They need to care for the people. They cannot throw the people to migration. Migration is can be very good. Yeah, it's traumatic.
Well, some people are going to remain there, right? Not everybody can leave, right?
Not everybody can leave, but that people that cannot leave is the people that I think that they're neglected.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
And I understand, but for the ease of the language, but I don't know if you have been in Haiti, but
I've never been to Haiti.
To Saint-Louverture airport, you see planes from Air Canada, from United States, of course, Air France. I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And I know if those planes are there, it's usually people coming back to Haiti to visit their family.
Yeah,
so they love their country. They love their country as much as the Dominican love their.
Haitians are fiercely nationalistic about their. That's one thing I've noticed, and in some sense, I think they should be, because again, the Haitian Revolution was really quite an achievement. You know, like it really was a thing. It was the first Black republic in the world. It was that they fought the French Empire and defeated them. I mean, it was really something, you know. And I think that there's no reason why Haitians should not be proud of their country. I think it's, you know, it's in a bit of a bad state, has been in a bad state for over 100 years now, but that doesn't mean it can't get better. I refuse to believe that it's just perpetually doomed in Haiti. I just don't think that's true. As you point out, when there are children going to school, there are always people that want their children to have a better future, right?
Jason, they were the first country besides United States to have their independence.
That's right.
1804.
Yeah, it's incredible, really. It's really.
I mean that's something to be proud of.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it really is. And it's also, it's like, I really think this, I mean, the institutions you mentioned earlier, I think the key ones are just people cannot exchange well with each other and peacefully exchange with each other and have a normal functioning day-to-day life if there's no security, right? There's two ways that human beings who are strangers, and that is to say, you know, not everybody in Haiti knows everybody else in Haiti. There's a lot of strangers. There's two ways they can interact. They can, you know, people, and this is true everywhere in the world. It's not just true in Haiti. You know, you can fight and steal from somebody else, or you can give him something voluntarily and he can give you something back voluntarily, right? And the voluntary one is better, but it requires a security, an overall what's called a leviathan, where if you go and attack the guy and try and steal, then the cops come and take you away. So that stops people from doing that, right?
Yeah,
It prevents that from happening.
this was sorry aspect of law and order. So I feel that the political class in Haiti has to do a better job at that.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
at
it
providing
starts at the
some
top is what you're saying, right? It's got to be the political class has to be better functioning, and that will trickle down to the police and the army and all that, right?
yes, and
Yeah.
many people have, for example, accused the ruling economic class to be not caring too much for Haiti too, and that could be it also. I mean, there should be an environment for that hardworking people to work in peace,
Yeah,
and fix their issues. I mean, I know that they have a hard time maybe agreeing on something. If you can see the amount of political parties that
I know nothing about the Haitian. There are many parties. Is that right?
I think they are. I think I saw. I was there. There was a political campaign, and I saw a lot of candidates.
Right.
A lot of candidates, and it's like de Gaulle, what he said about France. How do you govern a country that have 300 different cheeses?
That's good. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So some countries, Israel and Italy are often pointed out in this regard, that there are many political parties, and it's very unstable. I think Italy has had, something like 75 different governments since World War II. Like, they fall every few months or something, right? And Italy seems to function okay, though, compared to Haiti, right? I don't know. It strikes me there are other problems other than just the number of political parties. It's not clear to me that the political system is really all that important in some senses. I think it's, again, how do you get a police force that functions, that actually does its job? When people that are actually patrolling the streets, and then somebody calls them, they go and how do you get that to work? I don't know how that, like, the politicians they're in there they're making their laws, and they're getting elected or whatever. But the general functioning of the state is almost apart from that. It's a separate thing in some senses, right? Like the bureaucratic state that includes things like the army and the police, that transcends the democratic system, because those people are not elected every 4 years or whatever, right? I mean, if you're the police chief of Montreal, you don't change your job when François Legault wins an election, right? You're still the police chief. You know what I mean? Like, it has to be sort of a coherent structure beyond just the political, I think, is what I'm trying to say, And I don't know how they can do that. I don't know if you have any.
Oh yes, the functioning, the part that function in a democracy are people that are not elected.
That's right.
For example, the chief of police or whatever, what you mentioned. But there's have to be and I'm not telling that the Dominican Republic is without issues, without political programs. Far from me for that. But I think that's what needs to be done. A sense of okay, this is a state. This is a government. Whatever institution we have dissolved, or we need to create again, because I mean, you cannot function like a country like that. It's going to disappear.
Yeah, well, that sort of it raises the question of what exactly. Yeah, so the worst case scenarios you've already outlined, I think, which is sort of total internal collapse, where you have a civil war in Haiti, and then that could spill into your country and so on. Just maybe something positive as we move to the end. What do you think the best case scenario? Like, imagine if in 10 years you could outline something that would be realistic, that could actually be achieved, that would be the best case scenario. What do you think that would be? What would that look like in 2032?
I mean, it will look to me like, as I mentioned, some security institutions. I mean, courts of law functioning, I don't say they're not functioning, but that's what
They're not functioning
security.
very well right now. I think we can
Maybe they're
safely
not.
say, right?
For
Yeah.
example, well-trained police and a way to solve the disputes, because at the end of the day, it's people that it's not seeing eye to eye on something.
Right. Yeah.
You mean that there should be a better way to discuss your issues that arming that, well, I get this rifle, you get that one, that let's do it this way.
Yeah.
I see it like those institutions existing, and internal healing. I mean, there's too much rupture among the Haitians.
So maybe 10
feel
years is too short of a time frame.
I think it's too short of a time frame.
Yeah.
But and I hate to say that, but they're not going to do that. They will not be able to do that alone.
Yeah.
I mean, other countries, and I'm not talking about invasion, it's only if they allow it, if they want it, should help them.
So you believe that it's going to require also some outside help. You don't think that the it could be achieved internally just on its own?
I think they're not listening to each other.
Yeah.
That's my impression. I don't say it's that way, but from what I hear, I mean, once again, I'm not meaning invasion or occupation on it. This has to be done with their agreement. I mean, there's a need to the international community to help them, and not, once again, not throwing money. Money will make things worse.
I totally agree. Yeah, one of the things I've heard about Haiti that's a real problem in terms of that, the charity, is that Haitian, people who in Haiti who would start little businesses can't, they never really, it's not a good idea to start a little business, because you never know when there's going to be some shipment of stuff that's going to be free. So for example, let's say you start a business, making shoes and everything. So you're making your shoes and you're selling them. And then, some shoe company in the US wants to do a good deed. So they ship 10 million pairs of shoes to Haiti and they're giving them out for free, and your business is destroyed, right? So you put that on everything that people could be selling to each other. So people just don't really do things like that, right? That's what I've heard. I've heard that's one of the problems, is there's not enough, because of this insecurity of charity. Let's say the charity kind of comes in and then it goes away, and then it comes in and then it goes away,
and nevertheless, there are businesses that are working, because, for example, a lot of construction materials are bought in the Dominican Republic and they are sent in Haiti in trucks. And those truckers, those drivers are frequently kidnapped.
Wow.
Not murder. It's very, very, very rare that
so it's a financial kidnapping. They bring them in and you have to pay a ransom of some kind.
Correct. And the company owning the truck and owning the load, they have to pay them to rescue the of course the human beings. And also maybe the
so that's effectively a business on the part of those gangs. That's one of the things they're doing, right? They're the trucks come across the border. I mean, it's interesting. Why wouldn't they have? Why wouldn't the companies invest in, arming the trucks and having them, having bodyguards go with them, wearing bulletproof vests and stuff like that? Does that seem crazy? It's expensive to do that, but is it less expensive to pay the ransom and the disruption? The guy's going to be gone and the truck is destroyed or offline.
I think that if we go the military way, I mean, sending the trucks, the drivers and security and all that, that there would be a loss of life.
Lots of what?
Life. I mean, death.
So you think it would raise the tension and they would make the kidnappers even more brazen and start shooting and
of course.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That will bring not only kidnapping, maybe murder, because if they're shoot back and the others, and that's a touchy subject there.
That's
So
interesting. All right.
yes,
Well, let's end on a more positive note. So maybe you might agree with me that I'm still convinced that the country could be turned around.
oh
I
yes, most
refuse to
definitely.
believe that it's sort of, because I hear a lot of people here, they say, oh, especially people from here who came from there often have a very bleak view. Like a lot of people who come here, they live here now, they kind of go, oh, Haiti's screwed. It's always, and I'm always like, well, why? And of course, they know more about it than me because they're from there, right? So I
Yeah,
mean, it's kind of strange that I'm saying that they should have hope, but I still believe, like, if you look at the course of human history, you're a student of history, like every place in the world that has a decent, stable, generally functioning society, like Denmark, or just pick the country. If you go back far enough, it was a crazy basket case of violence
yes,
and gangs. Right?
of
I mean,
course.
I picked Denmark deliberately. What was it like in Denmark a few hundred years ago when the Vikings were? You
Yeah,
know what I mean? It's like it was a bunch of people, the clans all fighting with each other too, right? That's the normal state of human affairs. Right. The way
yes,
that if Martians were to come down and look at the world, they wouldn't look at Haiti and go, oh my God, why is Haiti so screwed up? They would look at Denmark and go, why aren't they killing themselves in that place? Right. It's like, what are they doing that's preventing? Because the normal humans as people, typically, if there's no security, will revert to, I better kill him first because he might kill me. Right. It's sort of a
sure.
preventative strategy. Right. So
Sure.
I refuse to believe that if the incentives are right, that Haitians couldn't become like any other group of humans. Right? I don't think there's anything genetic about the people of Haiti or anything like that makes them any different from us.
I completely agree with you. I mean, if they go to the way of the discussion, their difference, and agree
Work them
on
out.
on a way forward, they will progress as a country.
Cool.
With all their institutions. And I want to also mention that I think that the key to that is in their national shield, in their seal. It's l'union fait les forces.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, that's all.
Together we are strong, basically, is one way to translate that, right?
Yes, and part of to butchering the French, but
no, actually, you had a pretty good accent. I was pretty impressed.
It's their union understanding.
Yeah.
And I would like to see some of that in the Dominican Republic as well.
Yeah.
But it's more patent in Haiti that it's what is needed.
Yeah.
And no one should be left out.
That's
even
right.
The ones that are in Canada, in Dominican Republic, in the United States, in French, whatever.
Well, maybe some of them are going to be listening to this, and maybe there'll be a kind of a butterfly effect, and maybe, I don't know, who knows?
Well, I would like that, because it's the same, and I don't want to derail the conversation, but I believe a lot in, not only for Haiti, but for Dominican Republic, the people that are outside our countries, that have lived in more organized countries. I don't like to say advanced or not advanced, but organized
point.
countries.
More organized. Yeah.
I have a plethora of lessons to share.
Skills. Yeah, they have observations and skills from living in. By the way, first of all, I appreciate your distinction. I'm gonna steal that from you. Countries that are more organized, they're not necessarily more advanced. I don't think Canada's any more advanced in many respects. If it is more advanced, it's because of the organization, right? That allows it to advance. It's not saying a country is more advanced sort of implies that somehow it's naturally better as a group of
superior.
It doesn't actually make sense, right?
or something like that.
Yeah, but it's true that Canada is perhaps better organized than the Dominican Republic, and the Dominican Republic is perhaps better organized than Haiti, for example, right? I mean,
But for example, Canada has more time that the DR and Dominican Republic and Haiti being organized.
Yeah, that's true.
You're
Yeah.
an older
Yeah.
nation. Like
there's a
maybe-
length of time you need of cohesion, like for say democracy to work. You can't expect a democracy to work within a year or two, right? It has to be something where the whole point of it is peaceful transfers of power that have to be done repeatedly before people really trust it, right?
And you have to trust democracy, but
That's
because
right.
it's easier to have one man or woman taking all the decisions and no Congress, no Senate.
It's easier for a while until some other guy wants to take over from that guy, and then right, and then you get this is the problem that the Roman Empire stumbled into in their empire days, right? They had no way they could succeed emperors, right? So there were all these constant plots all the time, right?
Yes, the Praetorians sometimes they kill the emperors and put the candidate for just to name to say a word.
Well, kind of like Trujillo was killed out after he'd been in power for a long time by some people who wanted to take over right. I mean, he was assassinated, wasn't he?
Well, that's could be the subject of another blog.
Maybe it should be. Yeah,
but not necessarily. I mean, it was planned maybe as a coup d'etat, but man,
it didn't work.
The security here, the police state here at that time, it was it was terrible.
Yeah,
people within hours of Trujillo being mowed down in the road. People knew the army was looking for the killers. They found them. Someone that should have taken some steps did not and was also captured. So it was not that easy. And of course, it was also they got help from another country.
Yeah, that's true.
Not to mention names.
Yeah.
But it was different.
Yeah.
It was different. And
one thing I would like to just close with is I would like to in a future conversation with you talk about this idea that you mentioned to me about democracies that in some Western countries. I mentioned there was an election here in Quebec where there's a kind of a sort of a fascist-like corporatist structure that seems to be in power, and this seems to be a thing that is more and more common in many Western countries. And maybe for a future conversation, maybe we could talk about that and how that's affecting my country and your country and other countries in the world today as a more modern international. This conversation has been very, very narrowly focused on your country and its relationship to its neighbor, right? We haven't taken a very wide perspective, but what do you think about that? You think that's a good idea?
That's a good project.
All right, well, that's gonna mean I'm gonna have to do some more homework, and maybe you have to try and think about what a good way to frame that. But listen, I really want to thank you for this. Has been really enlightening for me, and I know it's been a while we've wanted to do this, so I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, I'm very grateful for the chance to discuss this and to share. I'm just one guy.
Well, so am I. Right. And if some people, maybe 100 people will listen to this, that's 100 guys or guys and gals who maybe they're going to think about it. And, it kind of.
Yes. And we need to start this conversation because we cannot dwell in
That's right. That's right.
Distrust and hate, and you did that to me, and now I'm going to do that to you.
Totally agree. I mean, we cannot do that. Yeah, that is such an amazingly great way to end this. But my byline for my podcast is my goal is to get to the truth, right? So the idea is through conversation, right? So the idea is if we just have these conversations very frankly and just be open and honest about these things, maybe that can have some sort of a great effect. And I really look forward to the next one. Okay, Milton?
Well, thank you, Jason.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to today's guest on the Mega Blast podcast. I've been your host, Jason McDonald. This podcast is brought to you by Arts and Opinion, an online journal, which is also available in the Permanent Archives of Canada. Visit us online at artsandopinion.com.